Coming up, a new look at creatures we thought we knew pretty well. Turtles and a fish that isn't supposed to be here but is, and it eats everything in sight. That's fish, turtles, and more hungry fish. Oh my. Next on North Carolina Now.
North Carolina Now is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV. Additional funding for the North Carolina Science Now series is provided by GlaxoSmithKline.
Hello, I'm Frank Graff. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of North Carolina Now. We have been focusing on science stories as part of our North Carolina Science Now project, and so we wanted to look at how North Carolina scientists are using new technologies to better understand creatures that we thought we knew a lot about. And it's not just the creatures we are learning more about, it's also the habitats that they live in. Take, for example, the eastern box turtle. It is our state reptile, and as our state grows and changes, the challenges facing the box turtle grow as well. Think changing habitat, such as subdivisions and shopping centers and roads cutting through the forests and fields where box turtles live. Scientists believe the box turtle population is declining, but there is no clear evidence of that. And that's why a team of scientists, educators, and wildlife professionals have launched the Box Turtle Collaborative. It's an effort to learn more about the state reptile and what can be done to save it. I'd like you to meet Terrapene carolina. That's the scientific name for the eastern box turtle. Turtles are not only slow-moving, everybody knows that, but eastern box turtles are also slow-living. That means they reach maturity late, they have few offspring, and they live a long life.
And then you let people know that these are an animal that's of concern to us in North Carolina. So box turtles have been around a long time. So what's our status now? Do we have box turtles? How many do we have? What should we do? What can we do to maintain this population?
Turtles have survived because they are amazingly adaptable. Almost any habitat can be called home, from forest to grassland. Turtles will also eat almost anything: insects, fruit, even dead animals. And turtles can also escape predators pretty easily. That shell comes in handy. That's why eastern box turtles are found along most of the East Coast and into the Midwest and the Southeast. The eastern box turtle is also found in every county in North Carolina. That's part of the reason it's the state reptile.
We don't know how they're doing right now. And they're a generalist species, so they can live in lots of different kinds of habitats. Where are they most abundant? Why are they most abundant there? And what are the problems that they're facing?
But in a fast-paced world, the slow living that has helped the turtle survive through the ages also puts the turtle at risk from human activity. Roads and development can fragment a turtle's habitat.
So zone 17 for UTMs.
That's why these high school students from around the state are joining researchers in this forest in Orange County.
You're going to measure from the hinge to the anterior portion of the plastron.
This field research is part of the Box Turtle Collaborative, a statewide effort involving 4 universities and 5 state agencies to learn the status of the eastern box turtle, identify threats to its survival, and develop a long-term conservation strategy. Biologists at UNC Greensboro are heading the project.
Okay, so what'd you get?
What makes us concerned about how well they're doing is the fact that they need to live a long time in order to reproduce themselves. So a turtle might have to be a half a century old or more before it replaces itself in the population, has offspring. It may be older than that. We don't know. They're slow. They are vulnerable to decline because of the fast-paced world that we live in and the rate of development.
However, turtles don't like to be found. That's why they are so beautifully camouflaged. So, for this research trip, scientists brought in specially trained turtle tracking dogs. The dogs are trained to find and very gently pick up the turtles.
So these dogs immediately pick up any and all turtles and bring them to me. And the way they find these turtles is not visually, but using scent trails. Turtles, when they travel, they apparently leave a very faint scent trail so that male and female turtles can find each other.
Turtle IDs.
Once the turtles are found, the location is documented. The turtle is also measured and weighed. The sex is determined. Red eyes and a concave plastron, that's the bottom of the shell, are the typical signs for a male. The turtle's age is also estimated by counting the rings on the scutes, or the scales of the shell. It's kind of like counting the rings of a tree.
Pick any scoop. You can count this one, this one, this.
This turtle is a male, about 15 years old.
Just looking at them and marking them and studying the animals is my favorite part.
Students, with guidance from teachers and researchers, do all the work.
For example, the parts of the turtle shell, I had no idea what they were called. Like, the top is the carapace, the bottom is the plastron.
And the next one, so you close it up, zero it again.
This is a great opportunity for me to get out in the field and have some fun and learn some new techniques that I don't know about.
Lastly, the turtle is identified and labeled before being released.
If you go around the lateral edge of the turtle, they have individual scales. So we assign a letter to each one of these scales.
That unique marking process created the name AMV for this turtle. That's important because if turtle AMV is captured again, researchers can compare the data to see how the turtle has grown and whether its habitat has changed. The turtle is then released exactly where it was found.
If you're actually immersed in nature, it gives you a different appreciation. So rather than sitting in four walls, you get out, you can smell the air and see the leaves and the plants and the animals.
Turtles are homebodies, not just because they live in a shell, but they'll spend their entire life in a range of only a few acres. So it's important, if you find a turtle, to put it back exactly where you found it, unless, of course, it's crossing a road or by the side of the road. In that case, you want to put it in a safe place in the direction it was heading. How's that? The Box Turtle Project started in 2007. It's designed to last 100 years. There are 30 locations around the state where data is routinely collected, including state parks and large privately held tracts of land, like this forest. All the data is entered into a database managed by the Wildlife Resources Commission. Scientists are already analyzing the information that's been collected to see what can be learned about the health of the turtle population.
What makes them wonderful advocates for the natural world is that you can pick them up, you can hold them and learn from them, and they don't harm you. They are our North Carolina state reptile, and they are familiar to a lot of people across the state. So they're good ambassadors for the natural world. They are good indicators of habitat.
Researchers with UNC Pembroke and UNC Greensboro, along with Davidson College and Elon University, are involved in the Box Turtle Collaborative. They are joined by the North Carolina Zoo, the North Carolina Arboretum, North Carolina State Parks, the Museum of Natural Sciences, and the Wildlife Resources Commission. Researchers even want you, the public, to join the project if you find a box turtle. We'll have a little more on that a little bit later in the program. And the folks we interviewed for the story wanted me to remind you one more time, if you see a turtle crossing the road, pick it up and move it out of the road, but be sure to move it in the direction it was going. And now we move from tracking turtles to tagging and tracking fish. Specifically, North Carolina's state fish, the red drum. North Carolina, as you can imagine, has a valuable commercial and recreational fishing industry, but it's difficult to assess the health of fish populations off the coast and whether catch limits should be increased or decreased, well, because the fish are essentially invisible. Well, not anymore. Researchers are using some very high-tech and some low-tech ways to learn more about the status of the state's fishing industry and how to better manage it. The focus once again, North Carolina's state fish, the red drum. You are not watching a video game. The moving dots are red drum. Here's what one of them looks like. The fish on the screen are also very much alive, and these fish have had radio tracking devices implanted inside them. Each device sends out a unique signal. Call the picture a digital snapshot of the life of a fish swimming around the mud flats, oyster reefs, and seagrass in the New River near Jacksonville.
And so these tagging approaches let us be with the fish sort of all the time, understand what habitat it's using at different times of day or different seasons or as it grows, and then add other experiments to try to determine if they're feeding or they're avoiding predators. And what about those habitats? Is it the structure of the habitat? Is it the productivity of the habitat? What is the fish benefiting from or not benefiting from by having a mosaic of different habitats such as seagrass and mudflat and oyster reef and saltmarsh?
The New River is a tidal estuary. The water is brackish, a mix of salt and fresh water that is relatively clean and incredibly productive. Catch and release studies like this tell researchers that flounder, crab, and spot are just some of the aquatic species living beneath the surface.
What our lab tends to focus on more than anything is habitat value.
But there's a limit to what scientists can learn by simply catching and looking at fish. They can learn about the fish tail.
We can't see through the ocean, and the fish are basically invisible to us. If I was studying a tree, I could tag a tree, and I could come back the next day, and if the tree's not there, I assume it's dead. With the fish just may have moved on, and the fish may be dead.
The coolest thing on the drum is their spots.
But they can't learn about the fish story, where it goes, what it's doing.
Some of them have like 5 or 6, some of them have 1.
So Dr. Joel Fodry and his team from the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill Institute of Marine Sciences are fishing for knowledge.
Managers, the general public, scientists, we all seem to agree that habitat has value for fish. Without good habitat, you lose fish. But quantitatively, we can't really predict how much habitat equals how many fish or how much fish production. And there's a number of reasons for that. Fish have individual behavior, their seasonality, their size-specific habitat use.
The team is studying the connection between a healthy habitat and healthy fish populations.
That fish had a ton of spots, yeah.
A morning of checking nets on the river produced only 2 red drum large enough to be tagged.
We'll do a procedure, a surgical procedure on the fish, just like you or I would have done if we were to go have a surgery. We'll anesthetize the fish so that they're basically under and they're not feeling anything. We cut them open and we put the transmitter inside and suture everything back up and give them time to recover and then release them back into the river. The bath that he's putting the fish in is an induction anesthetic bath. So it's got a dosage of anesthesia that is manageable for the fish so that it doesn't kill the fish, but it will put it under and basically asleep. The fish will roll over and go belly up, and he's not dead, he's just basically sleeping, and you can still see his gills moving, and we know that his bodily functions are still operating as normal. He's just basically feeling nothing at the time. As you can see he's doing right now, he's starting to turn himself over, which gives us an indication of when we can start the procedure.
Speed is essential.
And once on the table, we also maintain a flow of water over the fish's gills to keep oxygen provided to the fish during the surgery. The saran wrap provides for a more of a sterile surface than the foam that the fish is on.
A small incision in the belly is made. The transmitter is turned on and then inserted.
And so basically it just sits right in the belly cavity of the fish there. It presses up on some of the organs of the fish, but it doesn't do any damage to them. And there's been quite a few studies on procedures like this, and it doesn't seem to affect the fish's behavior, and they do really good with survivorship.
The incision is then sutured.
We're kind of on essentially the cutting edge in some ways because we're finally able to start to say specifically about what fish are doing on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis, which previously you would put traps out or nets, catch a fish in a specific habitat, assume that fish is spending a lot of their time in that habitat and feeding or seeking refuge. But now we can actually quantify how much time each fish is spending in each kind of habitat.
A fish is then measured, weighed.
2.1.
and a small piece of the tail is clipped off for DNA analysis.
I think we're really moving forward in terms of understanding how fish use habitat and what components of habitat are most important to them.
A separate visible tag called a spaghetti tag is also inserted. The tag asks anyone who catches the fish to notify the research team.
So that's a 4.4 pound, 4.25 pound fish.
The entire procedure, from sedation to recovery, takes about 20 minutes. One of the keys to the research, of course, is getting fishermen like those who are in these docks to return those tags. Some don't. They're worried about more regulations. Scientists are quick to point out the better data they have on the fish, the better the management decision for the fisheries that can be made. So they are now offering rewards to fishermen who return the tags.
So that's fish number 61877.
Dr. Jeff Buckle with North Carolina State University's Center for Marine Sciences and Technology also uses spaghetti tags and tracking devices.
So we're interested in knowing death rates of fish to help in the management of the populations.
Fish can be killed by natural causes, such as a cold snap, man-made causes, such as pollution. There's also predators, and fishing is also counted in mortality rates.
If you find that that total rate of death is too high to keep the population sustainable, in other words, the population is in decline, then we would have to back off of the fishing mortality rate, which is the death rate that we can control with management. And if conversely, if the total mortality rate is low relative to what it can take and the population is growing, then we could relax fishing regulations and increase the rate of fishing.
Scientists are now tracking about 100 tagged red drums swimming around the New River estuary. The findings so far?
One neat conclusion is that the fish have as much personality as people do, in terms of some like to move all the time, be on the go, some are homebodies and like to stay put.
So how important is it to understand the health of the fish population? Well, a report from the North Carolina Coastal Conservation Association estimated that in 2012, the combined economic impact of recreational fishing for just 3 species, the red drum, the spotted sea trout, and the estuarine striped bass, was $131.4 million. That's just recreational, not commercial fishing. The report also shows that recreational fishery supported 1,267 jobs. Let's stay underwater for a minute more, but now a fish tale about a race. A race to understand more about a fish that could be a disaster for the state's fishing industry. Researchers are trying to figure out how to stop the lionfish. It's an invasive species of fish that essentially eats everything in sight. Pretty appropriate name, lionfish. Right now, it appears the only solution is to physically remove the fish from the offshore reefs and the shipwrecks that they have invaded. In other words, if you can't beat them, eat them. Consider the lionfish. It floats like an underwater butterfly, but it stings like a bee. The lionfish isn't supposed to be here, but like most invasive species, it arrived innocently enough, and it isn't going away.
The lesson here is to try to make sure that we don't do something to bring another invasive species here into North Carolina or any environment where they don't belong.
The environment the lionfish is threatening is about 30 to 40 miles offshore, in 140 feet deep water, around the natural and man-made reefs and shipwrecks along the coast. More on that in a moment. Because to understand this beautiful and troublesome invasive species, let's go back on land for a moment. Kudzu might be the state's most visible and well-known invasive species. You can't miss spotting it along the roadsides. Kudzu was brought from its native China and Japan because people thought it looked nice, and it controlled erosion. Trouble is, kudzu grows incredibly fast, and like most invasive species, when it gets out of control, it outcompetes the native trees and shrubs by climbing all over them and killing them by blocking out the sun. Kudzu takes over. Just like kudzu, the lionfish is outcompeting the native reef fish. It's reducing the biodiversity of the reef environment. That's the variety of fish living in an area. In short, it's taking over its new environment.
The lionfish certainly are a beautiful fish, but since they are voracious predators, and they reproduce very quickly. They don't have any natural predators to keep the populations in check. The population has just exploded here, and it's really causing a problem for our area because they're eating us out of house and home.
We're concerned about the impacts because of how lionfish can change the reef fish community. So we're talking about changes to biodiversity. We've seen higher changes to biodiversity from lionfish than we do from many other types of stressors on reef systems.
In this lab at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Research Center in Beaufort, Dr. James Morris is one of many scientists studying lionfish. By examining the contents of lionfish stomachs, researchers say the lionfish is eating away the state's commercial fishing industry.
You basically have two categories that we're concerned about. One are ecologically important species. So these are species that are, let's say, important for the diet of other native top-level predators like grouper and snapper. If lionfish are consuming those species or over-consuming those species, then that diet is not available for some of the other commercially important species, for example. And that disrupts the balance. The other concern is that they're actually predating directly the juveniles of commercially important species like snapper and grouper.
That's right. Lionfish are not only eating the food supply of grouper and snapper, they're also eating juvenile grouper and snapper. Lionfish eat about half their body weight each day, and they can live for 30 years. What's more, scientists tracking the life cycle of lionfish say females produce about 2 million eggs per year, and they are able to spawn year-round. That improves the survival chances for lionfish and gives them a greater opportunity to overwhelm the native species. We'll never know for sure what started the lionfish invasion, but the fish were first spotted off the coast of Florida in the early 1980s, and DNA tracking has narrowed it down to 7 or 8 separate fish. It's believed folks emptying their aquariums into the water put the fish into an environment where it shouldn't be, but it thrives. From Florida in the mid-1980s, lionfish have spread incredibly fast. They were first spotted off the North Carolina coast in 2000, which means in 13 years, lionfish have firmly established themselves in the Carolinas. It appears lionfish can't survive much farther north because the water temperature gets too cold. However, because the water is warmer, lionfish now range into the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. Lionfish are moving towards South America.
Actually, they're the perfect invasive species, right? Because you have no predator for them, so nobody's going to attack you. They don't know how to deal with them. I've seen some recent graduate work studies that show that the local fish that we have here, they're just confused by them. They don't know how to react to them because they're not their natural predators. So they know how to react to the normal predators that they have, but these are new predators and they have different tactics. So they flare out their fins and then they suck the fish in when they come in. So our native species don't really know how to deal with them.
So these are the spines of lionfish, and they're venomous, and they are there for venom defense. They're to defend from getting eaten. So a predator coming from behind would have a hard time consuming that lionfish.
Scientists say lionfish present such a successfully destructive combination, voracious appetite, rapid reproduction, and no natural predators. It appears the only way to slow the lionfish invasion is for people to swim into the picture.
We have demonstrated now that you can successfully control lionfish on artificial reefs, and the best way to do that is to physically remove them.
Welcome to the inaugural If You Can't Beat 'Em, Eat 'Em spearfishing tournament.
So more than a dozen coastal businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies met in Beaufort this summer and organized the state's first lionfish fishing derby, a way to help the environment and the economy.
It's not a fish that most people are going to think of as a food source. It's not that easy to capture. We haven't had very good luck capturing them. But it's actually a very nice, lightweight white meat, kind of like a flounder, very good to eat, actually really easy to clean. The only issue with it is capturing them.
Since the lionfish is here to stay, it would be very difficult to get rid of them. The goal is to thin out the lionfish population from a reef area and help balance the ecosystem.
What we're hoping, at least with this tournament, is to maybe clear different areas. We're going to take some of our boats to specific lionfish-laden areas, like the NACO, where we know that we see lionfish all the time. It'll be like a pruning process, so we hope to create little oases where there are no lionfish and that our native species can grow and develop from there.
And here's a scary thought. The latest lionfish research shows the fish are actually overweight with heavy buildups of fat because they are eating so much. About 200 lionfish were caught in the tournament. There are plans for another tournament next year. By the way, other states along the East Coast that are also struggling with the effects of lionfish are holding similar tournaments. And that is our show for tonight. For more information on any of the stories we have featured tonight, including recipes for cooking lionfish and how to join the box turtle study and register information if you spot a box turtle, log on to our special science website. That's science.unctv.org. I'm Frank Graff. Thanks for watching. Good night.
North Carolina Now is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV. Additional funding for the North Carolina Science Now series is provided by GlaxoSmithKline.